annual house price growth across the 38 biggest economies in the world has more than doubled during the pandemic to hit 9.4% according to the OECD. Particularly here in South Korea, a pattern of frenzied property transactions concentrated in the Seoul metropolitan area has been off the charts despite 26 rounds of measures by the current government to cool down the market. Now, you might assume that house prices would stay more or less the same or even decline during the COVID-19 pandemic, but the opposite has actually happened in most major economies across the world. To make sense of this trend, we connect with Anup SRIVASTAVA, Canada Research Chair of the Haskayne School of Business at the University of Calgary. We also have Raymond CHETTI, co-founder and CEO of Xyland, a real estate startup that uses big data and AI to offer automated valuation models. Thank you, both of you, for joining us. Very good morning to you and a good evening to you, Dr. SRIVASTAVA in Canada. Well, starting with you, Dr. SRIVASTAVA, now, OECD statistics show that despite the pandemic eroding people's income and causing a lot of uncertainty and instability, property prices have been spiking, especially in urban areas, including cities in South Korea. So first of all, just what is going on?
Well, thanks a lot, Soyoung. It's great to be back in your program. A very important topic, very important question. I believe there are 4 factors that led to increase in housing prices. First, there is enhanced demand for housing space. Every home now must include separate work areas for every member of the household. So there is demand for bigger houses. Second, people realize that they don't need to live so close to their work areas. They can live further away in more comfortable settings and commute to work when required. So there is demand for new housing. Third, interest rates are at historical lows. Fourth, people haven't spent as much on restaurants, vacations, or on discretionary items, so there are more savings. All of this translates into greater demand for housing. However, supply is inelastic, at least in short term. Increased demand coupled with no commensurate increase in supply means higher prices. This is a phenomenon world over, not just in metro cities or in Korea.
Right, and most analysts do seem to believe that the pandemic has really helped generate the current boom as some city dwellers leave urban areas. So, Mr. CHETTI, so many people in urban areas, they seem to be leaving places like New York, San Francisco to the suburbs, really, in search of more affordable spaces and even greenery. But the situation rather seems to be the opposite in South Korea, where demand for housing in the metropolitan area surrounding Seoul is just going up and up. It's shooting up with no limit, it seems. So what trends have you seen over the past year in terms of apartment transactions and pricing?
So here in the past year, we've seen apartment prices in Seoul by over 25% year on year from last year until 2021. This contrasts with price growth of 24% from 2018 to 2019 and 3% from 2019 to 2020. If we take a look at Seoul's surrounding suburbs of Gyeonggi-do province, we can begin to see growth trends for apartment prices resemble a hockey stick, where prices have grown on average 5% from 2018 to 2019 and 6.3% from 2019 to 2020. Price growth in Gyeonggi province has doubled over the past year to over 13.5%. However, when we take a step back and analyze all apartment transactions in South Korea as a whole, we've seen apartment price growth actually slow down year on year from 2020 to 2021 to around negative 2.81% compared to changes in annual price growth of 2 to 7% year on year from 2018 to 2020. In other markets outside of the capital area, such as Gyeongsang-namdo, where prices have declined 2.5% to 2.9%, and Gyeongsang-bukdo, where prices have gone down about 0.9%. In other big cities like Daegu, prices have declined by about 9.4%, and Busan by about 11.6%.
Right, so Mr. CHETTI, why is there such a high demand for apartments in Seoul in particular? Why do you think the government's measures, all 26 rounds of them, have really failed to cool down the market?
So these measures, they've ultimately more or less tried to over-control the market without letting the market kind of decide prices by themselves and let the private sector more or less decide them. Over-regulation has led to limits in supply. Unfortunately, redevelopment projects and reconstruction projects have more or less been stalled because of these regulations, and private developers and operators haven't really been developing as many units as before. They aren't seeing the same profits that they were, so we're seeing less new units added to the market. The same applies for the government's 3 laws on rent and lease, or 임대차 선법. Although this law tried to help people looking for a new house and looking to stay in the same place, unfortunately, it had the opposite effect. Landlords couldn't change prices for an extended period of time, so it would be very difficult for them to actually move a tenant out, which sounded great. However, it had the opposite effect, and landlords got a bit more hesitant to put units on the market, which is one of the reasons why we're seeing less 전세 or deposit units on the market. So given these sets of regulations, we've seen less units on the market, which has spurred dramatic panic buying, which is why we've seen so many people try to buy homes very quickly.
Right, and at the end of the day, all it does is hurt actual first-time home buyers, young people who are looking for housing. And Dr. Shrivastava, first-time home buyers are struggling to afford down payments. With soaring housing prices, home ownership is becoming more and more out of reach. And while, as mentioned before, the government has tried over 26 times to cool down housing prices, but to no avail. Do you think there is a solution to this? I mean, why do you think that the government's measures to really just calm down the market, market speculation, has really failed here in South Korea?
I'm going to not talk about Korea, but I'm going to talk about New Zealand because the problem there started before pandemic. And let's use that as an illustration for Korea. So a starter home started costing $1 million, and 20% down payment implies $200,000. Now, how many people starting their lives can afford this kind of money? And it led to social problems. New Zealand even had a government elected on this platform, but it again proved ineffective. As Dr. CHETTI has brought this out very clearly, that housing prices cannot be cooled just by temporary measures. Imposing hefty taxes or lending restrictions can temporarily reduce demand, but they do not solve the long-term problem. The long-term problem is the lack of supply. Supply is not increasing at the right place, at the right pace. Every major metro city has restrictions and laws against construction and reconstruction. Even if the land is available, builders and local residents lobby hard to prevent new construction, so the prices remain high. In summary, the policy that can solve this problem is the only policy that can solve this problem is a steady increase in supply. Every government tries easy solutions, that is to constrain the demand. It solves the short-term problems, but it leads to a bigger long-term problem.
So, Mr. CHETTI, it seems that, as both of you have mentioned, there's a strong lack of supply, and also houses just becoming more and more affordable for youth and first-time home buyers. Well, what kind of homes are they looking for, and what kind of support do you think they need?
So whenever I speak to my Korean friends here in Seoul, of course, everybody wants to find the newest, the hottest, the best apartment in Songpa, Gangnam, or Seocho. Maybe you can refer to this as the Manhattan of South Korea. But unfortunately, prices in those regions have skyrocketed to over $1 million US, which makes it very difficult for them to afford buying a home in these very ritzy, fancy areas. So just an example, my colleague at Zyland found a great starter home. It's not exactly an apartment, but it is inside of a villa. In Korean, we say 연립다세대 주택. And these villas are known to be significantly more affordable for younger newlywed couples, which they can maybe find a jeonse or maybe even purchase for a lower price than an apartment.
And now, Dr. Shrivastava, this isn't just a South Korean or New Zealand type phenomenon, but prices all over the world for homes, they've far exceeded the 2006 to 2007 highs, and they are continuing to surge, leading many to worry that the housing boom will go bust when sufficient supply hits the market. What's your view on this? I mean, what are the risks ahead?
I'm not as pessimistic as most people are. I don't think it's a boom and bust cycle, at least not as much as it was in 2007 and 2008. And let me explain why. First, the new supply is not coming at the same pace as it was coming in 2007. Land prices and cost of construction have gone up, and therefore it's not coming at the same pace. Second, prices exceeding 2006 or 2007 levels is not a serious concern, in my opinion. Look at the prices of other assets. Look at stock market or commodities or gold prices. They have doubled or even quadrupled in some instances. Third, there is very little subprime lending. People are putting enough equity. They're putting in 20%. So there are enough cushions built into housing prices. Yes, there are some risks. For example, people are buying without any inspection or without even looking at the house or offering 50% above the ask price. But on an overall basis, I think housing market today is not as risky as it was before the subprime crisis.
Mr. CHETTI, now your company now offers a solution for the widening gap between actual prices and asking prices for homes. Now, why is this important and how are you achieving this?
We feel our work is extremely important because these days apartment prices have been going up so much that if you're a home buyer, you may tend to overinflate or overestimate the value of your home. Just because you hear prices are going up, it may not necessarily mean that your home also goes up the same value. So we hope that our data can provide an unbiased, accurate measure where both buyers and sellers may negotiate fairly from what the actual real market price might be. And we hope the data can prevent over-speculation in the market by being valued by AI, by our unbiased AI.
And that's where we must leave it today. That was Anup Shrivastava, Canada Research Chair at the Haskayne School of Business at the University of Calgary, and Raymond CHETTI, co-founder and CEO of Xyland. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Soo-young.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, as always, thank you very much for watching.